there's not a family buried here who wasn't touched in some way by the war between the states. The William Green that I mentioned to you lost 3 of his 4 children in the Civil War. All 3 of his sons at that time served and never came home. The Shacklefords and the Smiths each had sons who served locally here. In fact, Franklin Smith is buried here, and he was a guard out at Camp Ford, and maybe you've visited there and seen his name on one of the plaques. Mary Long had sons, son-in-laws, and grandsons who served in the war between the states. 5 of the people who are buried here are Civil War veterans, so they did come home and were buried locally. As Mary Jane said, the people who came here had a work ethic that would absolutely put you and I to shame. They left a lot of times everything that they had known up to that point and just struck out and came to a land that was a wilderness at the time, and they made something out of it, and they made something out of themselves. And so we have every right to be proud if you're a descendant of the people buried here. In fact, we have preachers buried here. We have men who served as county commissioners buried here. And we even have 2 men who were instrumental in starting Hickory Grove School, which was the forerunner for Rice Elementary School, are also buried here. Matthew Wood was a justice of the peace. And that just names a few of the people who are buried here. Now, many of you have asked me here, when was the first grave here? And when did you and your husband get involved in this? How did you know about the cemetery? And when did you have the last burial here? The first burial took place here. It was an infant, and it was in the early 1850s. And the last burial took place here in 1927. How did we get involved in this? My husband has relatives that are buried here, the Green family. And we just struck out one day looking for the cemetery. And if you want to know what it looked like at that time, if you'll just look further through the woods here and you look at how it's grown up there, that's what we saw the first time we came here. We took it on as just a project, if you will, to get some exercise and do a little civic duty, and it carried on after that. Now, some of you might say, well, why did you do this? Well, I'll have to admit that there's really 2 reasons. One is I'm nosy, and maybe a more polite thing is to say I'm curious, but the other one is that I'm driven. The nosy part was I was looking for my husband's relatives, and we found some of them here. The driven part was that I could not turn loose of the cemetery. Once we got started on it, I just couldn't lay it down. We had to see it through all the way. And I'm proud to say through 4 owners of this land that we have stood in the gap for the old cemetery and have helped bring it to what you see out here today. Several years ago, we had some difficulty with getting in to work the land here and keep the cemetery up. And a television station sent a man out to interview me and do a little blurb on the evening news about the cemetery. And his closing question to me was, why are you doing this, lady? Those people that are buried there have been dead for over 100, 150 years, so what do you care? They're not even really your blood relatives. And my answer to him was, if you have to ask that question, then there's not any answer that I'm going to be able to give you that will satisfy you. If you don't understand, there's nothing I can say that will help you understand. It's just one of those things that you see that needs to be done, and you do it. Now, I didn't do it alone. I had a partner in crime, and I want to recognize my husband, Leroy Beatty. He was the one who helped me work at the cemetery here. Leroy, stand up and be recognized for your work. And I'd also, while he's standing, I'd like to recognize the rest of my immediate family, because my children and my grandchildren have supported me in this. So I'd like for my daughter and my sons and my grandsons to stand up. My granddaughter, these people have all helped me in this cemetery effort. Thank you. Now, I would also like to recognize the other family members who are here today. we have representatives besides our family, and you all can stand again. Anybody who is related to the Greens, the Ellisons, or the Smiths, would you all stand, please? These people are buried here. These are your relatives. Okay. The Long family. Mr. Hatley, I know you're here. If you'll stand and be recognized. This is his descendant was Mary Long, his ancestor, rather. The Longley family. Do we have anybody from the Longley family?
My husband.
All right. The Wood family has a good gathering here today. Thank you for coming. And we have a representative from the Shackelford family. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other families that are buried here that have representatives that I have not met? Okay. Thank you. So if the gentleman and lady that's going to unveil our marker, that's really what we came to see today, was the unveiling of the marker. So if you all will come forward at this time.
Excitement!
In closing, I would like to thank at least two other groups of people who are not family related, but who have helped in the care of the cemetery. Kay Fackrell, 7th graders, came out 2 different times and helped us to mow and weed eat and in general care for the cemetery, and I want them to know how much I appreciated the help that they gave us. Also, I want to say that we have worked this cemetery through 4 owners, and the Go Corporation and Mr. Fackrell and some of the other officials here have been very generous with their money to help us to do what you see today, and the fencing and the clearing of the land and so forth around it, and we appreciate so much their support. I think finally Mr. Fackrell has caught a glimpse of what I felt about the old cemetery, and is as enthusiastic about it as I am. Thank you.